Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Welkana. In today's video record, I'm going to talk about how we design and develop, assessment in OpenEDX Studios. In my previous video record, especially this one is second video record. In first video record, we have seen about how we actually design and develop learning content or learning intervention in OpenEDX Studio. Even we have seen the structure of this OpenEDX Studio. So in today's video record, I'm going to talk about this how we design assessments in OpenEDX Studio. So let me start, this video record by sharing my PowerPoint so that we'll talk on that. More or less, I will make this practice or this video as practical as possible so that we will see how we actually design and develop this assessment in OpenEDX Studios practically. So not only the theoretical aspect, not only something that I explain for you, but I will make it as practical as possible so that you will handle it by yourself after you watch this video record. So, as I told you, my name is Welkana Shetum, and actually I'm going to talk about how to build courses in OpenEDX Studios. This is actually the second video record. Let me open that specific PowerPoint. So this is the second video record on how to build courses in OpenEDX Studio. So in my first video record, we have seen about how we actually design and develop, learning content, learning intervention in OpenEDX Studio. But in this video record, I'm going to talk about how we design and develop assessments, because assessment is also very important. Like, we have learning objective, and then so we have learning content, learning intervention, like some activities, some exercise that help our student to achieve that learning objective. Then we need to evaluate, right, whether our student actually acquire that learning objective or not. And we do that by using learning assessment or course assessment, right? So today I'm going to talk about that, how we design and develop assessments in OpenEDX Studio versions. So this is the second video record, and I hope you will enjoy this video record, and it will help you to develop the skill that help you to design and develop assessment in OpenEDX Studio. I'm Workana. I'm teaching at Ethiopia Civil Service University. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the following things. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how we design and develop open response assessment in OpenEDX Studio version, and then I will talk how we design and develop common problem types. When we say common problem type, it includes, like, for example, when you think about assessments, commonly we have different type of assessment, right? Multiple type of questions, like true false type questions or parts, and also we have like fill in the blank type of questions. Sometimes even we have like matching type of question. That's all common problem types. That is like kind of close-ended questions. The answer we have for that specific question is too specific, and then we can, like, it's not like open response assessment. When we say open response assessment, it's a kind of essay. So the answer is somehow, even if it's correct, the way we answer it is a little bit different from student to student. Even if they are explaining the same concept, they can answer it in different ways when we come to open response assessment. But the common problem type, like matching, multiple type questions, or like fill in the blank, those things are actually has a specific answer, and is a kind of close-ended or a kind of objective question. So we'll learn about those things in this video record, how we design and how we develop the type of assessment in OpenEDX learning management system. Then I will talk about advanced type of the problem components. In addition to the common problem type and open response assessment, we have also advanced tab. These options under these components, additional components, collections. Especially advanced tab help us to do some assessments that related to mapping, drag and drops, and we'll see them in detail in this video record. And also I will talk about additional components, additional resources. For example, if we want to share textbook for our student, if we want to share a calculator, if we want to give them an opportunity to use a calculator in the system, still we can do such type of things in OpenEDX learning management system, and we call it additional resource or additional component. And I will talk in my today's video record about these additional components that help our students to experience, to have a good learning experience in this online learning. So in my today's presentation, more or less, I will focus on these four things. At the end of these sessions, I believe, or at the end of this video record, after you watch it, I believe you will, or you get the skill that help you to design and develop assessments, different type of assessment, not only open response assessment, but it's different type of assessment in OpenEDX Learn Studio version. Then so we'll talk about also some additional resources so that you know how to enable those additional resources for your student to enjoy this online learning. Now let's start from open response assessment. What is it from the beginnings? I think the concept of what open response assessment is not new for many of us because we have experience of that thing, open response assessment. Of course, when we say open response assessment, they are designed specifically for long answer, essay, and other text or maths-based response that must be written in long form and require manual grading. This, when we say open response assessment, it includes like long answer. It's not something short, rather long answer, two or three, whatever paragraph it is. Sometimes it is essay type, like open response assessment are commonly we call it essay type exam, essay type, assessments. And maybe like mathematics things, like you may drive something, prove these things about some theories using mathematical, procedures. That is what we call it, kind of open response assessments. And therefore, if you want to design a type of assessment for your student to measure your learning objective, then you need to use open response assessment options. So the interface, when we say the interface, that boxes in OpenEDX Studio allow students to either type or paste their answer into a textbook or upload file. Of course, they can answer it in two ways. Either they can directly text in it or write in it in that interface, in that answer box, or they can also do in another places, maybe in MS Word or other places, and they can upload it in the form of picture, in the form of PDF file, in the form of MS document file. What type of file we give them, they can upload that thing and then we can see it or we can grade for them. So we have different options to do so. Now let's talk about steps to set up an open response assessment. The first step, decide if the assessment or grading will be done by the students themselves. That is self-assessment, peer assessment, or staff including instructor assessment, or a combination of these assessors. We need to decide what type of open response assessment that we want to share with our students. Is it self-assessment or peer assessment or staff assessment or a combination of these assessors? What type of assessment? So that is the first task. That is the first thing is we need to decide even before we start building in OpenEDX learning my OpenEDX Studio version. The second task, write a prompt that explains what the student should write. This is a question, right? You need to give them instructions, right? So that that is write a prompt or instruction or just a question for your student on that specific issues. So that they read that instruction, they read that question, and then they will respond for your question according to your instruction. So that the second task you need to do, the second step you need to do or follow is you need to write a prompt. Thirdly, you need to create a rubric that shows how you will grade their submission. Now, what's the rubric? A rubric is actually the criteria that you are going to use when you grade it. That's also very essential, right? So that especially when we say like we need to design a rubric, even when you design, this open response assessment specifically to to meet transparency of grading or grading transparencies. That is very essential. You need to set rubric before you start building even your assessments. That is very essential. That things promotes grading transparencies. So that we need to ensure that things. We need to develop rubric criteria that we actually evaluate that open response, because it is open response assessment. Otherwise, we end up with subjectivities. You see, unless you put the necessary criteria to grade it, even before you actually publish that open response assessment and then the student access it. Before that, you need to set the criteria for grading, and then there is no bias in grading systems. That's very essential. Lastly, you need to establish due dates. That's also very important. Due date is very important. You need to check the schedule and do it automatically or manually. I think you know about this new component or add new component. They are very essential. They are very important portion in OpenEDX Studio versions. They are very important because in order to add learning content for your course, you need to use these tools. In order to add assessment for your course as well, you need to use these tools. Therefore, these tools, this combination, this collection are really very important. What are they? Advanced. What type of things I can use inside advanced? What about library content? What about text? What about open response? What I can get in open response? What about in problem? What about in video? What about in drag and drop? I need to know all these things, the content of these collections. We need to know, like, otherwise, we will not, or we cannot design a good quality learning, like attractive online learning content. So we need to know those things. Now we are going to use open response. Yeah, then we'll use problem as well. I think you know about videos. We'll see today drag and drop. I think you know these two things: library content and advanced. This is like if you want to develop multiple questions or many questions, like coding, like question on coding and those things. We'll discuss about this thing as well. Then advanced. Sometimes, like for example, if you want to bring a PDF file, like for example, one of my friend asked me, like, it's very difficult to write mathematical equations in OpenEDX, right? But yeah, of course, it's not as, so far I didn't notice like the writing mathematical equations in OpenEDX Studio version is not as simple as what we do in Word, right? So what you do, another option that like you can do that things in Word document. You can write that equation in Word document. So we are familiar with how we develop equations or those mathematical things, formulas, and those things in MS Word document. Then you can change it into PDF, and then you come here and you can insert that, as you can you can impede, so that that PDF actually can be seen in this MS, in this OpenEDX studios or in OpenEDX learning management system as it is. It's kind of, you impede it. You bring that body as it is, and then you put it as it is. So that it's look like a page itself. So that is also another ways. It is kind of, you can go around, right? So this is one way that you can overcome this challenge of texting mathematical equation in OpenEDX. Yeah, but I think it's not that much hard to even texting so far. But anyhow, you can come up, like you can overcome this challenge by doing these things. Therefore, if you want to put some PDF file, not like 2 or 3 PDF pages in the OpenEDX learning management system as it is, right? So that you can put it as it is, and then your students are going to read over this, right? That's PDF files. So that is one option you have to, like, put some type of picture, some type of mathematical equations in OpenEDX learning management system. That is not our point today. Anyhow, we'll see them in the future. Now, I want to talk about open response. So this is open response assessment. So what you do in order to design and develop open response assessment in OpenEDX Studio versions, you need to click on open response, and then this short pop-up window will come, and then what you do is that you need to select one of these options. So you need to decide whether your open response assessment is peer assessment only, self-assessment only, self-assessment to peer assessment, self-assessment to staff assessment, or just staff assessment only. But you need to know these things at these stages. You need to decide these things as this step. So you need to choose one option. That is very important step. So this is the second step in designing and developing open response assessment in this OpenEDX Studio versions. Now, then once you select that things, you get say type of window. Then you need to, as usual, click on edit. And then when you click on edit, you get this window. And then in this window, you can write the prompt. The prompt is the questions, the instruction to answer that specific question. And so that you need to write the prompt here. And here you need to write a rubric. That is, the rubric is the criteria for grading. So you need to set the criteria for grading at this stage. And here is a schedule. There is a plus sign over here, and it looks like it's not visible directly. I know what's under this plus sign, but when you read the notes in how to build courses, OpenEDX Studio training, in that training, actually if you click this plus sign, then you can get some explanation about that buttons. If you click this plus sign, then you get that some little explanation about, very short but informative explanation about this, the button under that plus sign. That's why I just screenshot it, and therefore this picture is there already. So it's not a little bit not visible, but I think like you get the point when I talk on it, when I speak. Like this one, it says assessment types. So this one is like a button that help you to select the type of assessment, whether it is peer assessment, self-assessment, or instructor or staff assessment, the type of open response assessment. So now let's show you this thing in practice, because as I told you, more or less, like I will make this video record as practical as possible, so that you will learn some skills and some knowledge or know-how on how to design assessment in OpenEDX Studio. And also I want to make it very short as well. If it is long, it's a little bit boring, isn't it? Usually we start from our own university's microsite. Make sure that you are like logging to your university's microsite. And then I want to explain this thing, of course, by using one of the cores that I've designed for hybrid format, this Advanced Research Meter 2. And that one is very easy to explain about these things in this course content. Let me go to that specific open response assessment in this content. So it's here in this unit we'll get one open response assessment. So I will explain about this open response assessment over here. Now here is, you see, final reflection on practicing SPSS. This is one of open response assessment that I have designed for my students. So the first task you do, right, you need to click on edit. That is very essential. Maybe let me explain. Maybe this one is already designed, so let me start from the beginning, so that on explanation part I will come here. So in order to add some open response assessment in your course content, specifically on this LMS, you need to click on where? Open response. Click on open response. Then from that open response, you need to select one of these, and I want to make it like a kind of self-assessment, for example, not self-assessment, peer assessment, this one. So you can choose depending on your interest, depending on your objective as well. So this is a sample. There are some sample informations on these things specifically so that you can read, and if you get interested, if you get some informations, you can like take a note, and otherwise just you can delete it. So in order to do that, just click on edit. That is the first task. You have to click on edit. Let me click on edit. And then as you see here, there is a prompt here button. There is also, we have also a rubric. We have schedule button, we have assessment button, and we have a setting over here. We'll see what we can do in each button now. In prompt, what you do is that you need to write the question. Yeah, an instruction to answer that open response assessment test. That is the question, isn't it? So to delete this one, just select it and then click backspace. Just delete it. Or click delete, that's deleted. Now you want to write your question here. Maybe what is your question? What is, your question? That is open response assessment. Do this thing, whatever it is. Then you need to write, once you finish this thing, you need to go to Rubric. Actually, this studio save everything automatically. Therefore, you don't need to worry about saving and things like that, about power fluctuation, everything, about connections, so that you don't need to worry. Automatically, everything is saved, but not published. Therefore, if you want to show your result, your output, your course content to your student, you need to click on publish. I think we have seen about this thing in my previous video record, but we'll discuss, through the process. So here is the rubric. In rubric, what you do is that you need to write a criteria for grading. Here is the criteria name, and then here is the criteria prompt, so that even you need to write the criteria prompt. For example, the criteria name is an idea. This is a sample, is a template that you get in this OpenEDX Studio, so that you can delete it if you want to do like this, and you can write your own. And you can delete these things, you can write your own. And then you need to write, for example, here, options. You see option. This is like poor, for example, let's say poor. The criteria is here, it was already like kind of idea. And then also the criteria prompt. You need to read that things, they are very important. And then, you give poor, the level is poor, and the point is 0, you give him 0 if it is poor. The criteria to say that answer, that response is poor is here. Difficult, because this one is a template, okay? It's example over there already in the system. So difficult for the reader to discern the main ideas. Too brief or too repetitive to establish or to maintain a focus. You see? So that if it is too difficult for the readers, and then you are going to give him poor level, so that they rank these things are poor here, fair, and good. This is the levels, and the criteria with content. Now this is depending on this, for this criteria for idea cases: poor, fair, and good. We have these 3 levels, and we have also a point for that, grade for that. If you say good, the criteria is here: present a unifying theme or main idea without going off on tangents. Stay completely focused on topic and tasks. You see, this is, this is the criterias, and you can give him 5 in these cases. You see, you can, of course, this thing is editable. If you want, you can make 4. If you want, you can make 8. Whatever it is, right? You can set the grade here. And this is what we call it is a levels, so that you can give like fair, good, fair, those things. You can give excellent, very good, extraordinary, exemplary, and those things, whatever name you give them, you can give them as you wish. And then maybe if you want to give feedback for this criteria, you can give a feedback here. Is feedback is optional, feedback is required, feedback non-feedback. You can choose. Like, of course, once you evaluate, this is a kind of little bit objective, and therefore still maybe your student may not be satisfied with your responses, and therefore you need to give them what we call it a feedback. This is very essential. So you can't make it none, rather you may make it optional, so that depending on your like it's good if you make even it's a mandatory, because they need to give a response sometimes, like that is very essential. So that like feedback is very important. One of the way that we ensure instructor presence in online learning is by giving them a feedback. If you give a feedback for your student on their on their response, on their assessment, then they feel there is someone who is really follow them and like ready to even to give them a feedback. If you ignore them, just they forgot maybe whether you are there or not. Therefore, it's very important to give feedback. And so this is how you do. In the schedule, you can set schedule for response start date, response due date. You see, response start date. Even you can set start date. That is very essential, right? This is 2001 to 2000. By default, is 2029. Then you can set that things as you wish. That is very essential, and you need to put that thing as well. Assessment steps. This is also very important, especially on the assessment step. Here there are four things option we have. One, step learner training. Now you can give for learner a chance or an opportunity to practice evaluating, because we are like saying like self-assessment. They are going to make assessment based on based on your rubric. If you say self-assessment, they are going to make assessment based on your rubric, so that you give them criteria or you give them a rubric, and then they evaluate themselves based on that criteria, self-assessment. But to make like, because you that is graded anyhow, right? More or less is graded, or just you need to do you need to do like you need to like they do that things appropriately, right? Therefore you wish that thing, therefore you need to give them an opportunity to practice. And if you want to give them an opportunity to practice, what you need to do, you need to tick this one. You see, tick this one. If you tick this one, if you make this thing enable, or if you just tick this one, then you give opportunity for your student to practice. That's not a kind of assessment. They just practice. They just practice. And the other one is self-assessment. Under self-assessment, you give them a rubric, you give them a criteria, and they are going to assess themselves. They are going to evaluate themselves. They are going to give grade for themselves. Therefore, we believe them they are rational people, and so that if they missed that specific question, they need to deduct some grades. And we have two things here, right? Like human being is selfish in nature. On the other hand, we also assume that rationality of human beings, and so that whatever it is, like it is practice, it's okay. So that they need to be like responsible and those things. And the other one is peer assessment. If you want to make a peer assessment, you need to tick this one. Under peer assessment, especially under peer assessment, there are for example, if you will say view option, these things are very important. Must grade, graded by, and enable flexible peer. If you tick this one, step peer assessments, if you tick this one, you need to decide these things. Must grade. What does it mean? Specify the number of peer assessment that each learner must complete. Valid number is 1 to 99. So that means you need to specify how many response one student assess. That is the number of peer assessment that each learner must complete. How many assessments that one student needs to assess? Is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 7? Whatever it is. So that they need to know that things. Graded by. Graded by, you need to specify that things. You need to specify the number of learners that each response must be assessed by. valid number is 1 to 99. That means the number of learners, the number of students that each responds. Now, the point is, the subject is response. The number of learners that each response, each answer actually assessed or graded. By how many students that one response should be graded, one answer should be graded. Maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 50, maybe 65, whatever number it is, from 1 to 99, depending on the number of students you have in the class, of course. And the other very important thing that you need to know is that enable flexible peer grade averaging. This is also very important. That means when when this thing enabled, actually it has true and false. If we say false, it is disabled. It is not enabled, it's not active. False means it is deactive. When we make it true, that means it is enabled. And if it is enabled, or when enabled, learners who have received at least 30% of the required graded by peer reviews and who have waited longer than 7 days for a peer review will be assigned a peer review grade using available peer reviews. Like for example, I mentioned 3 here. Maybe I can mention it 5, 8 for example. I want 8 students assess or evaluate that one response. That means one response, one answer should be evaluated by 8 students, 8 peers, 8 colleagues, 8 classmates in this context. I want that thing, I decide that things. But if only like 6 students or 5 students responded, I mentioned it, that the maximum students that they can actually grade that specific assessment are 8 in number, but practically only 6 students, assess that specific assessment. You see, then, of course, if we enable these things, if we enable flexible peer grading average, these things, if we make these things true, then if this criteria are also fulfilled, that the criteria is here. When enabled, learners who have received at least 30% of required graded by 30%. What is 30% of 8? 30% of 8 means it is like maybe 2, right? 2 over 8 is like 1 over 4, right? That is 25%. 3 over 8 is still maybe 4. 4 is 50, right? So we need to get a calculator in this context. 4 is 50. I think 3 is fine. I think 3 over 8. So 32 divided by 3 point something. Yes, 30 divided by 8 is like 3.24, like 60, like 3.7, right? It is 3.7, so that it is above 30. Therefore, if 3% actually grade that specific assessment, and actually that assessment, that response waited for 7 days, then if 3 of them, actually 3 students assess or grade that specific assessment, then you can calculate the average of those 3%, and then you give a grade for that specific assessment. If this thing is enabled, that is very nice. Sometimes like you can make it active, or if you don't want these things, you can make it false. That is not enabled. So this thing is very important, and therefore you need to do those things. What about setting? In setting, in setting, in setting, you can give a response, open response assessment. This one is like a common name, therefore you need to give your name. For example, reflection 2, like that. Reflection, whatever it is, of course, not reflection, something like the topic, the title for your open response assessments, right? I will show you my case, 2, for example, reflection 2. And then text response. Maybe you can decide these things as well. Text response. Maybe you can say text response is required, optional, or none. If you say none, you don't, all students actually need to submit, you know, some uploaded file. They need to upload. They can't text it. So there is no box even to text it if we say text response. None. If this thing is none, therefore they need to respond in kind of attachment things like that. And the other one is response editor. What type of editor? Maybe when they text in that interface, response editor, select which editor learners will use to include a text-based response to these problem prompts. Maybe you can choose these things. Simple text editor, simple like maybe if grammar, spelling error, then that specific box, that specific interface inform the students to correct it, spelling error, grammar, and those things. Simple text editor. If you can even use what you see is what you get editor. This one is, I think, the advanced one. I think, I hope. So you can use that one if you want, and a little bit you get more advanced options. I think this one is better than this, as the name indicates by default. Literally, you can understand the difference here. The other one is fill upload response. File upload responses. File upload response. You can choose one of these options. Required means uploading is mandatory. Optional means uploading is optional. If you have, you can upload it. If you don't want, you can leave it. And none, if you say none, even uploading is not possible. So that no need to upload it. There is no option that you actually upload any file from your computer or from some external disks. So you can decide depending on, of course, make sure that this thing. If you say this one none, this one is also none. So how you are going to get answer? That is so that you need to check these things. And allow land text responses. Sometimes you can also allow for your students to use these text styles, land text, so that they can do or they can use that coding things and then they can bring it here. If you want, you can say true. If you want, you can say false. It's depending on your interests. Top response, this is a kind of ranking. Show rubric during response. This must be true. You see, show rubric during response means when they actually read that instruction, they need to know. Sometimes some rubric is actually leading to the answer. And therefore, in that context, you need to make it this thing false, right? Sometimes you see some rubric actually give some kind of tip for student when they they do their assignment or when they respond to their assignment. And if it has this type of nature, your rubric, then you need to make this thing off, like kind of false. So this is all about how we configure or how we design and develop open response assessment in our context, in Open EDX Studios. Now let's show you mine, for example. Here is a file I give him, for this open response assessment, final reflection on practicing SPSS. I give the name so that I will show you those things. So as usual, you start from where? As usual, you need to start from edit. From edit, right? Then make sure that you are clicking edit on this specific, window, this specific parts. So that this edit, not the previous edit, because the open responsiveness is in these places. So click that thing, and then here is prompt. Prompt is as usual, it is instruction. For example, in my case, this is instruction. Let's read it together. Based on the provided cross tabulations of genders and employment category, what trends do you observe in the distribution of males and female across the clerical, custodial, and managerial position? Use specific data points from the table to support your analysis. So I want to like my student to explain the trends. Like that means in this context, across gender, male, we have male and female, and then here, the job category, we have three job categories: clericals, custodials, and managers. So I want to know in which job categories, that's the number of male is many or are many, in which category actually male dominates, in which job category female dominates. So I want to know that status, that trends, in which job categories that females engage significantly, so that I want to know that things. So that cross tabulation table is here. So you can see the cross tabulation table. Of course, I make analysis based on this table: clerical, custodial, and managerials. And female, male are here. Females, 200 out of 260, 216, 206 of them are clericals. And we don't have any female custodials in custodial job category. In the managerial position, they are 10 in number. You see, you can say something by looking this number, this magnitude. Over here, out of 258 male respondents, employees, 157 of them are in the clerical job category, 27 of them are in custodial job category, and 74 of them are in the managerial position. You see? So in what job category that the female are actually dominant? What about in what job category the male are dominant? You can say a lot of things by looking at this cross tabulation table, right? So the question asks that thing, the instruction for to respond to this question is here. So this is instruction. So you need to write instruction in this ways. Then rubric. When we come to a rubric, you need to give a criteria name. I just mentioned it, trend identification. Criteria prompt, you can say trend identification. There is not that much difference. You can give a label. I label it as satisfactory, and I will give that specific student 1 point if no trend is identified. He talks something else. No trends. And if just kind of random, explanation, I give him 0 because in principle we don't give 0 for a student. This principle of teaching and learnings, I heard this thing when I was in grade 1, and our teacher told us, I will give you 0.5 because the principle don't allow me to give you 0. And she said like that. And so that thing is in my mind. I'm not sure whether this is true or not. When I say like this, people laugh to me. And in that principle, I will not give him, 0 for a student if there is some kind of response. And especially for if it is open response assessment. If it is a kind of objective response, like multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blanks and these things, that is objective, and there is no other option, right? Unless you give him 0, so that is the option. The only alternative you have is just 0. But in the other context, in open response assessment, even if he talks something else, he likes, isn't it? This is ideology. So trend identification, you give him 1, I give him 1 if it is something unsatisfactory, no trend is identified. But there is some text he explained about that things. Maybe I level it need improvement categories, and I give him 2. This is my just subjective or my judgment, but I need to make it publicly, like I need to inform about this rubric to my student even before they respond. They need to know it, right? That's very essential. Yeah, that's very short. Vague train identification. He tried, but he's like not clear. Maybe he didn't understand very well, and therefore need improvement. I gave him anyhow 2. Satisfactory, I gave him 3. Grade is this. So this thing is editable, my friend. Just you can write whatever you want. Here is also you can write just 7. Of course, you need to like this is 3, 4, depending on your interest. Identify some trends. If he identifies some trends, I give him 3 and I call it satisfactory. It is proficient. I give him 5, is excellent. And identify most trends. He identified. He said very well. He explained it very well. I, I call him exemplary, and I will give him 7. It was 7. And clearly identify all trends. Clearly identify all trends. He really understand it. So you go like this. When you design a rubric, you need to design a rubric in this ways. Click on the schedule. Click on the schedule. You can set response start date and response. And click on assessment steps. You can decide what we have seen over here already. I have explained about this thing. Click on setting. You need to write name of that specific open response assessment. Text response, it is required. And file upload response, it's not required. I don't want to have additional resources. That's fine if they explain it by writing over in that boxes. Allow long text, it may be true, it doesn't matter. It depends on the skill of my students. It's fine if they do it. And show rubric during response, yeah, it must be true. So that you need to set this thing depending on your interests. So this is how we set open response assessment. Now let's talk about introduction to common problem type. Cues and exam. These are the foundational block of what most instructors think of when they want to build an assessment. When we just want to build assessment, the first thing that comes most of the time in our mind is this like cues, exam, multiple choice question, true false type question, drop down type question, fill in the blank type question. Maybe what we fill in the blank is maybe numerical, it may be text input. Choose all that apply type question. Multiple type question, we have only one response. But choose all that apply type question. It may be one or it may be more than one. It depends on that specific setting. So that now we are going to see how we can set this thing. Open response is okay, fine. What about this one? This is also fine. We'll see how we do it. Cues and exam. Luckily, OpenEDX already has a template for each problem type. So you simply need to click on the problem type you desire and a templated version will be shown. There is a template, and I thought that is a kind of editing. It's not a kind of like designing from the scratch. It's a kind of editing. You edit. Everything is already there for you. Just you edit. You replace the words in the template. That's what we call it. We edit without erasing the code. No need to erase the code. No need to delete the code. And when you save the problem, you see your own question in this problem space. So now, let's start how we do it. You click on problems. These are better are very essential. You see, so far we have seen about text, videos, open response. Now problem. This buttons, these collections actually very important to add content to your course as well as to add assessment to your course. So you need to click on problem and then you need to choose one of these problems. Checkbox, blank, common problem, drop down, multiple choice, numerical input, text input, checkbox with hint and feedback, drop down with hint and feedback, multiple choice with hint and feedback, numerical input with hint and feedback, text input with hint and feedback. You can choose one of these common problem type. They are common problem type. They are common problem type. When we say common problem, that's a problem type that we commonly use. They are commonly used, very well known problem type. It's only that thing. Common problem type means it's explain that thing or represent that thing. Common in a sense like it's the usual things. The same thing. That's something that we are familiar with. We know them very well. It's kind of our day-to-day job is like that. So select one of the common problem types that you want to use in your queue, the step. Then to add your question text, click as usual edit. Use a slider to compare multiple choice components on the problem editor. So that is a step. I will show you in practice as usual. Let's go to our practical context. So let me use even I need to delete here. This course is like already designed. I can't like I need to delete these things. because like this one is like not for practice purpose, because it's like maybe our student, of course I need to publish it to like to share that content, that things for my student. I need to click here, but unless I click over there it will not be visible to my student. But even I don't want to put this thing here, so I need to delete it. You can delete, those things by using that approaches. I think we'll talk about that things, or I hope you know it already. So I'm going to the, my university's microlinks. So here, I have one practice question, practice course, shares. So this one. All right. So, I want to show you this thing. How we add, problem type. So, it's very simple. You need, first of all, to add or to get those components as usual, you need to go to the unit level, isn't it? Unit. Unless you are on the unit page, you can't see those components, and therefore make sure that you are on the unit levels. So let's go to the unit pages, and then we can get those collections or components, add components. The connection was fine now. It's coming. It's like so. So this is some of yeah, this is just for practice purpose. So we practice designing courses or content and assessment in OpenEDX Studio using these things. I'm doing these things so that you can do the same thing. Maybe if you want to share this experience with your staff, you can develop by communicating with your system administrator. You can develop one course share or course folders, and then you can use that as a practice purpose or for practice, because unless you practice it, by the way, one of the things that I highly recommend for Arizona State University facilitator, ishi facilitator, is like they actually recommend us to take how to build courses in OpenEDX Studio, but it is too theoretical. That thing is very hard unless you have a privilege like this and make it practical as like this, right? Otherwise, if you just read, it's a kind of mess. You can't understand it, right? It's very hard to, because it's too technical as well. So that doing, if you do that things in practice, and then you learn from practice and things like that, and it become practical. Otherwise, it become theoretical. So I recommend that things for the ISHI team at Arizona State University, or the one who manage it, maybe from the Ministry of Education, or yeah. So multiple choice, so that you can click on multiple choice. Yeah, because I want to show you how we add a multiple choice in our course content. So this is already a template. A template. We have this thing already there, so that this thing is very useful when we design multiple type of questions. This one is very very beneficial. It's very interesting. So it makes this thing developing assessment, this especially this assessment, very easy, because we have these templates. Just is about editing it. It's very simple. So let me show you that thing. So click on edit, and then you see here, you see what you do is that add the question. You can use this template as a guide to the simple editor markdown and OLX markup to use for a multiple choice problems. Edit this component to replace this template with your own assessments. So it's good to read these things. Once you read and understand it, you can delete it. You don't need it. Then add this question text or prompts here. This text is required. Now you need to write your multiple question type or multiple choice type question here. The prompt, the instruction to answer that things. You need to write it here, so that you have to text it here. Like it is, you can do it as you want. Then you can add optional tips or note related to the prompt like this. For example, if you put this thing here, this is a kind of code for that matter. For that matter, if you want to see the code this is in text format, right? Let's cancel it. If I cancel it, yeah, I can get it like no changes because I didn't save it, right? So that, for example, if you want to see this thing in the form of like code, this is very simple text. That's what make using OpenEDX interesting, because we can do our jobs with less coding. There is no coding around, so that you can do your jobs without like having some skill of doing some kind of coding. But if you want to see the coding aspect, you just click on setting, not setting, advanced editors. So it says like coding is coming, so that you see this is how you actually develop this question if you need to use a code. And it look like maybe kind of difficult, isn't it? You see, choice, correct, false. You need to be like this. Each and every symbol are very essential. And if you miss it, then the answer is you can't. That code is not working. Therefore, that thing make coding a little bit difficult or something like that. But you can use the template without coding, and that thing is very fine. It's very easy as well. So in order to add multiple type of question, the only thing you do is just you write your question here. Just write your question here, and then the choice is here. The choice, of course, if you put this thing is x sign in this bracket, that means that is answer. That is answer. Therefore, if for example I want to put, like, let's show you first this thing, right? Now we have this thing, like if I click this one and submit, is wrong because the answer like is this one. If I click this one and then click, it's wrong, right? And but if I click this one, this is the correct answer. As you can read, even you say the correct answer, you need to replace with the appropriate alternative that you want to give for your student for these options. If you click submit, is correct. But if, for example, I put another x here and another x here, you see, all of them are like correct. Let me see these things. For example, if I click here and submit, I'm correct, right? I get a point. If I click this one and submit, it's correct. Therefore, if you put X in that bracket, that means that specific answer is correct answer. Therefore, the way that the system understand whether that answer is correct, that choice is correct or not, is by this X symbol. If you put X in that bracket, and that means the system, this OpenEDX, understand that option, that choice as the correct answer choice. So you can do that things. And the other one is, for example, this is a multiple type of question. If you want to add, it's very simple. If you want to make like 10 multiple type of question, copy this thing 10 times and paste it. Copy, then do like this, paste, do paste, do paste, do paste, do paste, do paste 10 times. If it's 10 question, 10 times, then what you do? Then you can correct it. You can like make editing. It's a kind of editing. You have like multiple type of question on your MS words. Copy from there, paste here appropriately. So adjust the answer. Maybe you need to like make like don't make all the choice like B B B B B. That's not good. Therefore, you need to like adjust that thing. That's very fine. So it's very simple. It's as simple as these things. All right, now let's see another one. Another one. For example, if I want to like check boxes, what is the difference between multiple choice and the check boxes? In the case of check box, you can actually select two or more than two choices, right? Maybe it depends on the type of the question. You can select two or more than in multiple choice type of question. Of course, you need to select only one. You see, even the code is different. This one is a kind of square bracket. The other one is a kind of parenthesis, right? It's kind of parenthesis. or commonly we call it bracket, that things. If it's multiple choice, you see multiple choice options look like this thing. This is a kind of parenthesis. This is a kind of a square bracket. Therefore, if you put it in a square bracket, the system understand that specific question not as multiple choice, but as check boxes, so that you can even check 2 or 3 choices as an answer. You see? What about text input? Text input, that means text input, for example. You see, the answer is like, for example, what is the capital city of Ethiopia? So the answer is, what is the capital city of Ethiopia? What is the capital? So what is the capital? This is the answer, the question. Then the answer is, let's say, Addis Ababa. So this is the answer. You see, just click that one and write the answer and save it. And let me see what the look what the question look like. It say like this. What is the capital city of Ethiopia? Then you need to write, let's see, Bahar Dar, for example. Bahar. And let me see what it says. You see, it's wrong, right? And let me put Jimma, for example. The answer is Addis Ababa. If what about Addis Ababa? Then you see the answer is correct. So you need to, like, for example, if I put like this, like, you need to write it without any spelling errors, something like that. This is wrong. This is not Addis Ababa. What about Addis? Like this. This is also wrong. You see, you need to write the correct answer without any. What about capital letter? Addis Ababa. Whether it's is it? What about this thing? I think. I was wrong. Maybe like I can only try like 3 or 4 times. We'll see how many times we can try. Even in setting part, I will show you that things. That's not correct. Of course, that's not correct. This Baba. Actually, you can say okay without capital letters. That doesn't matter. This Baba. Both are correct. Yeah, yeah, it's fine. So you can do like this. This is what we call it, fill in the blank, right? What about this thing? This is text input. What about the numerical input? How old are you, for example? Those things. Maybe you need to fix like, how many general categories that the quality matter has. You can ask this type of questions. The quality matter has 8 general standards, right? 8 general standards. Therefore, the answer is 8. You can put like this. What about if 8, if it is numerical input, you don't need to put some character. That's also another mistake. If you say 8 in spelling, that's wrong. Because it is a numerical input, you need to write only numerical things, number only. What about drop down? Drop down. You see this type of things, drop down. Like for example, what is the capital city of Ethiopia, for example? From drop down, it's a kind of multiple choice type. So the incorrect answer, for example, if it is the answer is correct, you can put it in the bracket. And if you put some words in the bracket, that is correct answer. For example, what is the capital city of Ethiopia? Then let's make Addis Ababa here, so that, and let's make this one Bahar Dar. Like I want to see like Jimma, for example, like this, for example. So you see here, what is the capital city of Ethiopia? Then Addis Ababa submit is X. You see, it depends on what about Bahar is right. You see, what about Jimma? It depends on my setting. So you can do like this. So the point here is that if you put some words in the bracket, then that is an answer. That is an answer. That is what we call it drop down. drop down. So you can go for these things for those, type, you can use, one of these common, problem type or assessment types for your courses, right? So you can use these things or this you can follow this procedure to design say type of, assessments for your specific courses. Now, to assess the setting, click the Setting tab from within the problem editor. You should change the display name for the problem component to reflect the topic of assessment. And the setting change how learner interact with your assessment. Even you can set the maximum attempts. You see the maximum attempt is very important. And the problem weight is also very important. From the setting, you can do those things. Now let's see, where is setting? Setting is here. So you need to click on this setting and then display name. You see, you don't say like multiple choice, that is not fine. So like you can give some specific display name for that specific assessment so that it become more informative. Like multiple choice type, that's not informative. So you can say it is multiple choice type question, of course, but you can give any topic you want. Maybe for that specific course, content, let's say, um, capital cities, whatever name it is. If you don't, it is depend on your interest. Capital city name, capital city name. So that I want to check whether my student know maximum attempt. You can put maximum attempt. Like define the number of the time a student can try to answer this problem. If the value not set, you see, if the value not set, infinite attempts are allowed. You see, if it is empty, so that they can try as many as they want. Problem weights define the number of points each problem is worth. If the value is not set like this empty, each response field in the problem is worth 1 point. You see, if it is empty, by default the system give 1 point. So that you need to do that thing, randomization. Like for example, if you kind of coding, define when to randomize the variables specified in the associated Python script. For the problem that do not randomize values, specify never. So that is things. So show answer, sometimes if you want like show answer, like if you want to show answer for your question, you can say this thing, you can decide these things. Define when to show the answer to the problem. A default value can be set in advanced setting. Yeah, you can define these things. You can, depending on your interest, you can choose one of the alternative from here.